Whether you're a beginner or a pro, using the right tools makes all the difference. So today I'm breaking down my painting arsenal, everything I use, and you need to paint those beautiful miniatures, ranging from amazing brushes to super technological airbrushes, from wet palettes and basic materials. Here you're gonna see everything I use daily to realize my miniatures and maybe could help improve your miniature painting game. So grab your paints, sit back and let's dive into the tools that will upgrade your painting skills. To be able to paint your miniatures, you have to be able to remove them from the sprue first. So the first item I'm gonna present you is a clipper. You will need this item to simply remove the miniatures from the sprue, and you don't need something very fancy or particular. Just a solid clipper with a good blade will do the work. On the other hand, one thing I know for sure is that when you start painting, you surely don't want to see those mold lines ruining your paint job as soon as you paint with your dry brush or start layering and see those little lines ruining everything you're going to build up. So the next item is just a simple hobby knife or some sandpaper that you can use to quickly and easily remove those mold lines from your miniatures. Now that your miniature is ready to be built, you have a vast choice of chemicals that will make you see rainbows after an evening passed gluing all your miniatures together. My go-to choice is Tamiya liquid cement because I find it a great product, just a few drops and a few seconds, and your miniature pieces will never be separated again. In addition to his bonding power, we have an extra. Once you almost finished up your bottle, you can take some pieces of sprue, some pieces of plastic you just want to throw away, and add them into your bottle, creating what is called sprue glue. Basically, it's just a denser glue that you can use to easily fill the gaps between two pieces that don't really fit together. Other than that, for everything else that is not the classical Games Workshop plastic, I use some Super Attack, and for my basing I stick to regular PVA glue. Now I want to talk about what I consider to be the most important item. I think this item alone can make the greatest difference when painting. And I'm obviously talking about brushes. For too many years I used the same old brushes to the point that you couldn't even imagine that the thing once had a point. After switching to some good brushes, and I'm not talking about $20 each brushes, but even $10 each brushes can be perfectly fine, I discovered that my paint job was improving exponentially from day to night, and it was like magic because now the colors were magically going where I wanted them to go and not all around the miniatures in some random spots. What I will suggest you to buy or to add to your painting equipment are at least a pair of medium to large sized synthetic brushes for all the base coating, wash and metallics, so basically for everything that is going to ruin your paintbrush points, and maybe even a small one for painting the metallics details, so if you need to paint something very detailed with those paints, you don't have to worry about ruining your very good brushes point. In addition to those synthetic brushes, a pair of medium-small Kolinsky brushes to be able to paint all the details of your miniatures with a very good quality brush. And to finish the list, some dry brushes. You don't have to buy very expensive dry brushes, but I discovered that just $10 to $15 packs of makeup brushes on Amazon do quite a job, and so you can just buy them. You will have all the measures you can imagine included in that set, and you will have a very valid dry brush. For a beginner or someone that doesn't want to invest all this money in all those brushes, I think that a medium-large synthetic brush, a small Kolinsky Sable brush, and a good dry brush will do the job. You will have everything you need to start painting and to paint some very good miniatures. So now that you have all those good brushes, you have to take care of them. And the most effective item I found is basically a brush soap. It simply avoids the paint from getting stuck into your brush bristles, making them split and go everywhere. Another product I use for my brushes care routine is a solvent composed basically by isopropyl alcohol and some oils. The isopropyl alcohol helps dissolving the paint stuck into the bristles of the brush, while the oil keeps them soft and helps them maintain their shape. But once you have the right brushes, you can't just paint out of the pot, no? So here comes the next magical tool, my wet palette, one of the best investments I ever made in my journey into miniature painting. A wet palette basically is nothing more than a plastic container with a sponge inside of it and some paper. But why is it so magical? Well, do you ever find yourself struggling to keep your paint to the right consistency without having to reach for the pot for new fresh paint every minute or even every second? If the answer is yes, the wet palette is going to be your next best friend. It not only helps keeping the paint at the right consistency and like if it was always fresh from the bottle, but when painting for long sessions you can even leave your paint there for the night. Obviously you have to cover it with the cap to maintain the humidity inside of the wet palette and come back the next day having the paint as you left them. Obviously leaving the paints for so long on the wet palette isn't the best case scenario because paints tend to split up and change consistency. But knowing that you can rely on that and pick up your paint job the next day without having to find again that perfect color you have found mixing other 50 different colors to achieve the perfect shade, it's quite a good feature. The mechanics behind it are quite simple. You just moisturize the sponge, put the paper on it, and the water from the sponge tends to pass through the paper to the paints, keeping them fresh and wet for a long time. But I don't want to spend all those money in a tool. I don't even know if it's good or not. I prefer to invest them buying all those amazing miniatures and those beautiful colors coming out almost monthly. Well, if that's your case, you are lucky, because you don't actually need to buy right away a wet palette to have one. Building it's quite simple. You just need a plastic, glass or whatever type of container that can contain liquids, and then put a cleaning sponge in it and some parchment paper over the sponge, add some water, and you have your brand new wet palette. And to be honest with you, that was even my first choice. I started with a wet palette I built out of a lasagna container and using a cleaning sponge and some parchment paper. And after trying it for a few weeks, maybe like a month and a half, I find it so useful and so variable that I decided to buy a professional one. I can already hear you. Yeah, all those things are nice and very interesting, but what am I gonna paint with? Well, of course, we're going to put some paints on the table now. Well, in this case, this selection is so vast that I'm not going to tell you that one paint brand is simply the best and you have to go for it, because the choice is so subjective that the best one is what works best for you. So use the paints that you like, use whatever makes you comfortable painting with. I will tell you what is my go-to choice for my paints, even though I think you have already seen it before, and explain you why is it so. But if you already have a paint range or whatever that you like to use, keep using it and keep getting those amazing results that these paints can give you. Personally, after many years using Citadel colors, I moved towards Vallejo range, not only because their color range is huge, you can have almost any color you can imagine, but also because their coverage is very impressive, and I really love the matte finish that they usually leave to your miniatures. Even though, depending on the range color that you're choosing from, you can have that vibrant, punchy colors like the ones that are contained in the game color range, or some more matte pastel-like colors like the ones containing in the model color range. Mixing them, you can get stunning effects using the vibrancy of one range to enhance color and contrast and intensity, and the more matte finish of the other range to some details like skin, cloth or other parts to give them a more realistic feel. Bonus points, their dropper bottles are amazing. I never had my paints to dry out like it happened with other paint brands. Literally the week after I bought them, they were already dried out, and the only problem I've encountered is that sometimes the cap crack and I have to fix it, but using simply some sprue glue or some putty I can quickly fix the problem. So that's my preference. And maybe you prefer Citadel colors, and that's completely fine. I have a hard time replacing some of their colors too. I particularly love their browns, and if that is the color range that you're more comfortable into using, keep using it. And I understand that it is even quite easier to follow all their tutorials and paint like they suggest to paint their miniatures having the exact same colors. Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of words about Express or contrast paint because I don't really use them as much, especially as they are intended to be used. I tend to use them more as glazes or sprayed through my airbrush, and I find them particularly effective if used that way. But if you have a 2000 points army that you need ready for your next tournament or for the end of the week, they can be a very, very effective tool in your shed. You can use them with just a zenithal highlight, put them on top and have a fantastic result on your battlefield. Did I mention the airbrush before? Well, that's what I'd like to call a magic brush, because simply you can do everything you can think of with it, starting from priming to applying your first layers to giving your miniature some tones, shading, OSL, everything you can think of. And the better feature of it is that almost everything you're going to apply on your miniature is going to have a very, very smooth transition and a very smooth gradient. And those transitions can be acquired by a lot of brush strokes and a lot of brush control, and even though you can achieve a similar result, it's never going to be like what you have applied with an airbrush. Another great thing you can use your airbrush for, if you have to paint a lot of miniatures, you can basically set all those zenithal highlights, undertones and the initial layers in practically no time. So it's a very useful tool if you have an army to get ready. To conclude the matter, if you're considering to buy an airbrush, you definitely don't need to buy or start buying $200, $300 ones. You can simply buy a cheaper one and then upgrade it once you have upgraded your skills too. One thing not to cheap on about it's the compressor. You definitely want a good compressor because you can have the most expensive and most beautiful airbrush, but if you can't keep your airflow constant and if it has to shut down every few minutes to recharge, maybe it's not gonna make your airbrushing experience very enjoyable. Another very basic tool are modeling pastes. I usually use them to fill in some gaps, or maybe when you want to kit bash your miniature, you can use them to sculpt in details or whatever you like. And the one I prefer is Millipat, just because I find it to be more soft and easy to work with than classical green stuff, and also because I find it to have a longer life on your shelf. It dries out slowly compared to green stuff. But at this point, what else I'm going to need? Well, there's a lot of stuff that you can add on top of that, but basically some small rocks or sand and some grass stuff are everything you need for your bases. If you want to make a step further, you can buy some cork, and then you'll have the perfect basing materials. To finish off this video, I'm going to give you my last advices. The first one is about water. Try to have two separate pots for your water, one used for cleaning your brushes and the other one to add water to your paints. I have a small dropper bottle that I converted as a water bottle that I use to add some fresh water to my paints. You don't want the paint you washed from your brushes to get in your new paints, especially if you have used some metallic paints that will lead those small metallic particles into your fresh paints. The last thing you're going to need is a good lighting. I use those lamps that I got on Amazon for almost 20 bucks, and the most important feature on lamps are color, temperature and intensity. So in this case I made a quite good deal because I can regulate both of these parameters, and they have a temperature of around 5000 K that should simulate the sunlight. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have also found some good advices that could help you improve your setup and your painting. And I'd like you to comment down below with the paints you prefer, what you are currently using, what's your ideal setup, and whatever you like to use to paint your miniatures. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, don't stop moving forward through your journey into this big minis world.